we at the BTRC are specialists in betrayal, trauma, and sex addiction. And we started to see that pop up. Partners were finding out that their significant other was using AI to some capacity to act out, or clients were acting out using AI as a tool. So that really opened our world to realize that this was a thing that people were doing, and there weren't a lot of tools really at all to kind of address that. So we decided to create one.
Partner betrayal is disorienting, heartbreaking, and results in absolute confusion for the betrayed partner. You worry that nothing in your life was real, and you fear that you will never be able to trust your spouse or yourself again. Well, welcome to the Rebuilding Trust podcast with Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and what I can promise is that when you listen to my podcast, you'll begin to believe that there is hope. We will be hearing from experts all over the world who specialize in problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, and infidelity. Together, we will be asking them the hard questions about how you both can rebuild safety, find strengths, grieve and mourn what you had, what you never had, and what you fear you will never find again. The truth is that rebuilding trust is possible, and I am going to show you the steps to working together to build a whole new marriage based on the honesty, authenticity, and transparency that your marriage deserves. Rebuilding Trust with Carol the Coach. I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show and talking about this new project, because it's exciting based on the future of what we do with compulsive problematic sexual behavior, with partner betrayal. So let's get right to it. You know, there is no doubt, Connie, that AI can be a helpful thing or it can be problematic. To our listening audience, I'm talking to Connie Zollner, and she is one of the founders, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, at the Bellevue Trauma Recovery Center, and she actually helped to create AIRM, AIRM, right? And it's a special model that has this innovative framework to help individuals who have been harmed by AI involvement. So will you share a little bit about what prompted you to know that this was a necessary resource for people?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, everybody is seeing a lot of AI everywhere. It's infiltrating all of our systems. And we at the BTRC are specialists in betrayal, trauma, and sex addiction. And we started to see that pop up in, the behaviors that we were working with. So on either side, either partners were finding out that their significant other was using AI to some capacity to act out, or clients were acting out using AI as a tool. So that really opened our world to realize that this was a thing that people were doing. And there weren't a lot of tools really at all to kind of address that. So we decided to create one.
Right. And I thank you for being so innovative. And for our listening audience, you may not even have thought about how AI could be used to act out. I will share with you a story that I had with a partner in AI. So much of our work is about truth telling. And if the partner wants to know the truth of what has happened in the deception of the other person, the partner is able to ask for a therapeutic formal disclosure. And that typically has been followed with an emotional impact letter, which gives her voice, him or her, gives them a voice to talk about how destructive the discovery was, the acting out. And maybe even the disclosure, because for some people, the disclosure is needed, but it can really be hurtful because you find out all the facts. And then after the emotional impact letter comes the restitution letter, and that is written by the person that has problematic sexual behavior. And the partner I was working with, she called me immediately and she said, I just read his restitution letter. And I said, wait a minute. You were supposed to wait for me and we were supposed to do that in session. She goes, he left it out and I read it, which I understand. That's very difficult for partners to honor that I'm going to wait so he can deliver that to me. And she goes, he didn't write this. He did not write this restitution letter. He's using words in this that he would not know. She goes, AI did this. And so I asked her to read me the restitution letter. And I said, only you know whether he did or not. Let's have a session. Because really, it's all about communication and it's all about honesty. And later on, he admitted that he had used AI because he felt intimidated. But as you know, Dr. Connie, what ended up resulting was that he had deceived her again. Mm-hmm. And we know when somebody with problematic sexual behavior lies about anything, and certainly about using AI to write a letter that should be coming from his heart, it doesn't go well. Yeah. So I'm going to warn our listening audience that Dr. Connie may be talking about some things that you never even considered. So I don't want you to assume that your husband or wife is doing this, but I just want you to listen with a need for education and so that you won't get duped and so that you will know what resources are out there and available to you. Mm-hmm. So how is AI being used to actually cheat on spouses?
Yeah. I first want to say you're right. This is not about creating more trauma. It's more just coming from a place of information so that you know what's already happening and you can be informed. So the type of AI use that you're talking about is a little bit more general, where mm-hmm. people use it to, clean up an email or create a letter or, so on and so forth. What's really happening, though, in the technology area is much more advanced. So they're creating these algorithms that are intended to replace human interaction in some way. And so there are these targeted apps or bots that are created that mimic very intentionally human interaction, romantic interaction, and are supposed to facilitate like sexual, romantic partners. So mm-hmm. AI chatbots that are specifically created to be, fantasy, and of course, then a way for people to act out if that's something that they're, doing anyway, or maybe they are lonely and want to find someone to talk to. So what's maybe positive about them is they're filling this gap where if you aren't able to comfortably speak to another human person, there's an outlet, right? And it's very low stakes in terms of there's no rejection. This thing that is, created to be a person that you like, that meets your needs, that is in like your mind. You can give it feedback to respond the way that you prefer. Sometimes they're even able to generate an avatar or an image that you can look at while you're speaking, mimics like a FaceTime phone call, a chat messaging session. So they're getting pretty advanced in terms of their ability to also feel like a human connection. So there's that outlet where, loneliness, maybe you're practicing social skills, maybe, it's fun to kind of chat with something else. Where it becomes more problematic is in the sphere of, betrayal, sex addiction, replacing human connection, where you're losing touch with reality of, that this algorithm essentially is a human person, or it feels like a human relationship. And so that's where the AIR model comes in.
Well, and you're being very kind and neutral and saying that, it can enhance something for somebody who's single. And yet we know if there's a partner involved, it is problematic because it's a ghost in the relationship. I'm thinking of Noah Church. Have you heard of him? Noah Church became very concerned and accumulated research that showed that late adolescents and college age men and women were looking at so much pornography and then involving themselves in AI that they really didn't want to go out and have a relationship with somebody because it was just so much easier to do it in your room. And yet, if they did try, they no longer could get stimulated or have an erection with a normal person because the playing field is so different. And so I'm sure you see that a lot where people have trained their brains to want to create a fantasy as opposed to deal with real life. Because real life can be very, very messy. And at the same time, that's what's so rewarding is if you can connect around the mess and the real to form an attachment, right? So what you're talking about is artificial intimacy. And you felt like there was a need to develop a model to address this. And you did. And so was it just you, or did you have a whole team of people?
Not a whole team. It was myself and my two business partners, Jessica and Liz. And like I was saying earlier, we're seeing the need in our clinic, but when we started to dig into some of the research, that's when we really realized that this was going to be, or already was becoming, a really impactful thing. You're talking about a study that someone did. We found this big study it's very recent. It was done by the Kinsey Institute, 2025. And some of the statistics that came out of that were just really kind of mind-blowing. Something like 33% of Gen Z Americans have used AI as a romantic partner. Millennials, it's around 23%. 44% of single Americans who are dating reported that they thought AI was a good support and maybe even better than a partner. So young Americans especially, this I believe was only done on Americans, are turning to, or at least exploring these tools, these outlets. So of course, there's also emerging research that it's becoming really problematic. And, I think you can imagine anytime there's any sort of behavior that's any type of like emotional cheating or, a secretive behavior, that can be betrayal in a relationship.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm very proud of our Kinsey Institute. I am an IU grad, an Indiana University grad down in Bloomington, Indiana. And that's obviously where Dr. Kinsey got his start, was funded by Indiana University, and really looked at sexuality from a very non-judgmental perspective. And that's what we have to do. We have to be non-judgmental in our learnings and our teachings. So that 2025 research project sounds fascinating. I'm going to have to look that up. Now, I will say, I remember a colleague of ours, Dr. Rob Weiss, at a symposium during a lunch, talking about some forms of AI coupled with human robots, human dummies, vaginal pieces, penile pieces, so that they merged not only their fantasy with their experience, but then these blow up dolls and blow up equipment to have sex with them. And again, one could argue, well, that's no different than a vibrator or a dildo. And yet, I would be one to say, if that's the only way you can have an orgasm, if that's what you choose over and over again instead of a real person and a relationship and an attachment, and that's what you were doing when you did this research, is you were wondering, how does this affect attachments, right?
Right. Especially with the chatbots, they're so much more prolific than I think the devices that you're talking about. Everyone has a phone and you can access a chatbot or multiple chatbots all the time, 24/7, 365. So I think that's some of the behaviors that we're seeing when it's turning into problematic use. So AIRM was meant to be a trauma-informed, attachment-informed framework to help work with those who are navigating the emotional aftermath of intimate, maybe emotional or sexual relationships with AI companions. So not only betrayal trauma, but definitely any of those relationships, whether or not they're in a relationship or just finding that their abuse has become problematic for themselves, a framework to kind of help facilitate repair and attachment.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because being that you are a CSAT and Dr. Connie Zollner is a supervisor of CSATs, as am I, really, you know that it can greatly impact attachment. And I can see someone with compulsive problematic sexual behavior coming in and knowing that, or having a betrayed partner who says, my husband or my wife is in love with a bot, and is preferring the bot over me. So what kinds of resources do you have available for them? It seems like they would really need specialized help and assistance, like your Betrayal Trauma Recovery Center.
Yes, I think the complexity of it really lends itself to someone who truly understands betrayal trauma and somebody who truly understands sex addiction, because it's layered on top of that. The attachment piece of it is even more complicated, I think. So what the AIRM model is doing or helping clinicians, figure out what needs are being met through this AI bot. What unmet real world thing is this person seeking? Is it safety? Is it consistency? Is that non-judgmental presence? So that we can better understand what's going on and try to help from that perspective. And then sort of the same, that wound that's happening on the betrayal trauma side, what's going on that this person is feeling? What is the reaction that they're having? Is it feeding into an anxious attachment? Is it, are they fearful of abandonment? What's going on? And so we're really trying to support that person through that process. But first you have to identify like what's going on and what brought them to AI in the first place.
Okay. And so just to be clear, because I thought that was so fascinating, you're saying first thing you do in the model is really look at unmet needs. And I would assume that's unmet needs of the person that is acting out, and then unmet needs of the partner. So if you look at the person with problematic sexual behavior, this artificial intelligence provides something and someone, I have to say something because it's not a someone, something that is non-judgmental, one would not have to worry about being rejected, criticized. What other things would one not have to worry about?
You don't have to worry about being vulnerable. It can really enforce avoidance as well. That I think that piece of validation and true vulnerability being avoided are pretty big.
That makes a lot of sense. And it also would seem that it would be the ultimate in control. The person with problematic sexual behavior can control the situation exactly as he or she would need it to be. And we know as sex addicts that oftentimes it's not the sex that is the hijacker. Well, it's the fantasy of sex. It's the pursuit of the next person. It's the fantasy of what could be experienced in the future that is the lockhold over the problematic sexual behavior. And I would think the same thing. You'd be looking at new resources to access, new bots, new, visual and kinesthetic toys that can accompany this.
Yeah, they're highly customizable. The chatbots, you get to name them. Like I said, you can generate images, or there's an avatar attached to it. So, as you can imagine, you can do a lot of different things with that. And it's only becoming more and more realistic and more advanced as use rises.
Okay. And then now if we look at the partner, when a spouse realizes, oh my gosh, there's a third thing in our relationship and I've discovered it and it's scary. What unmet needs occur for the betrayed partner?
For them, it may not be as much unmet needs as this idea that there was no real person attached to the acting out behavior in this case. So that it was, just a bot, or they acted out, but it wasn't even with another human. It was just a robot or just an algorithm. And so there's some deep hurt that can exist in that space. It can be really confusing to understand why that would be something that their partner was drawn to. Could really activate some of the same emotional triggers as a human on human affair. It's still a betrayal of trust, of exclusivity or intimacy in a relationship. But it has that added impersonal feel that can really be confusing for a partner.
Well, then I'm thinking of the 4 types of attachment and how it would create a real sense of anxiety. Right. And one could form an anxious attachment, like, what are you doing when you go to work? What are you doing when you come home late? Do you really have a business meeting? And it would just generalize to anything the other person is doing. So you said the unmet needs are, you wouldn't say that's unmet needs as much as it creates, as with other partners, that sense of, I can't trust our relationship anymore. And that severely ruptures the attachment, right? So what do you do with partners? Because all of a sudden they have total loss of control.
So in that way, it's really similar work. It's still attachment work, looking at what wounds have been created or, perpetuated through this betrayal, helping them identify what needs they have then for safety, for trust, for stability. There's a little bit of a piece that is present in other betrayal, but in this betrayal especially, that ambiguous loss. It's very ambiguous, the type of damage that's done. And I think even more so, there's not a lot of understanding around it from peers, from family, of what this is or why maybe that they're even hurt in the first place. So they're opened up to a lot of, potential additional harm or secondary harm because of people just not knowing how to navigate this or how to talk to them about it. So there could be shame and secrecy involved as well that we'd want to address with a partner.
Well, it is so very new, and partners inevitably have difficulty getting the right kind of support from other people because there's a lot of imposed judgment that can occur. And yet with AI, I wonder if they too, a partner might get feedback of, well, at least it's not a real person, or why don't you just jump into it with that person and see if you can't be a part of it. And I know that your model speaks to psychoeducation first and foremost. And I find that that's what partners need in general. They need to understand, and their amygdala is so activated and they don't understand how this could have happened or why it's a preference. And then their executive functioning goes offline and they no longer feel like themselves. They can't make decisions. They can't speak. So your model helps them to understand how it could conceivably happen and what they need to do for self-care and for attachment and for their own sense of sanity.
Yeah, a big part of our model is validating that this pain is real. These emotions are real. What you're experiencing is real. The hurt is real, right? So in that way, it's familiar betrayal trauma work.
And so you do a lot of work with clinicians, educating them so that they don't, A, do harm, and B, they can begin that psychoeducation process too. Tell us some of the resources that you have. I know you have some on YouTube, correct?
Yeah, we've got them kind of all over the place. A good place to go is our website, theairm.com. So we've got resources for clinicians right now, but we're also working on resources for clients or partners specifically. So our model is for clinicians, for therapists who are interested in becoming more competent at working with this population. But we have lots of resources on social media, Instagram and TikTok, that are speaking to this topic from a client's perspective and helping them navigate, what do we do if this happens to me?
Okay, so just to kind of go over some of those resources, we have on Instagram, it would be at the.AIM or AIRM, thank you. Yeah. And the .BTRC, right? That's your facility.
And from there, you can go to the AIRM website.
Right. And then, of course, TikTok, again, it's that same Betrayal Recovery Center, and that would look like at the .BTRC. Facebook, it's a Bellevue Trauma Recovery Center. And you said your two colleagues are who?
Dr. Jessica Lamar and Elizabeth Aberze.
Okay.
So we own the Bellevue Trauma Recovery Center together.
Wow. Very, very interesting. I'm thinking about questions that I have, and I just talked about we don't want anybody to do any harm. Pastors, therapists, neighbors, siblings, but truly, this is going to be epidemic at some point. We've got a lot of people that don't know how to have relationships, and the use of their phone is increasing that. Now, you tell me, Dr. Connie, am I just being old? Am I just being old and I'm not seeing the value in any of this?
No, I don't think so. I think as clinicians, we're sort of primed to see like how things can go wrong, because they do, and they go wrong on a pretty big scale. I think there's, and certainly tech companies try to, forward the agenda of it being positive. I think there's probably some positives to it. Like I was saying, I also have a specialty in neurodiversity. And so I think there may be some ways in which these tools can help people who struggle with social skills, social interactions, maybe practicing what it might be like to mimic those dynamics. But certainly, they fall into the problematic space a little bit faster than I would like. People are looking for outlets. And I think whenever we're not turning to other humans for that, that can be not so great.
Yeah, that's problematic too. And so, okay, no, I'm not being old, but understandably, not everybody becomes addicted to this. But if you have that predisposition, genetically or epigenetically, to addiction, and I can really see where this could cause problems within a coupleship, or if there has been other forms of problematic sexual behavior. Couples have, when they're trying to establish safety and stabilization, there's a lot of conflict. And I can see that this would look like, to whoever's who's ever done the acting out, a safe way to get their needs met. And yet, since they already have the addiction, it's not safe at all. It's further dividing and putting a wedge in between a relationship that could heal. So I don't think we have a grasp yet as to what it's doing to the brain. And, Patrick Carnes told us, he told me in 2007, to work in this field, you're going to have to be a brain scientist. You're going to have to understand how compulsivity lights up the brain, what is produced, and then figure out how to heal that, reverse it, just interrupt it, Have you done any brain studies? Do we know how artificial intelligence and surrogates are affecting the brain, and short-term and long-term?
Yeah, definitely not long-term, because it hasn't been out long enough, but we are seeing research come out that I don't think, surprisingly, is saying that it's problematic for our brains. Some of the stuff that I'm recalling right now has to do with the fact that if you are a very prolific user of AI, that your brain is kind of becoming more lazy, and it's harder to access some of the skills that you would have, like memory and short-term and long-term recall, things like that, that become impacted when you're not having to do a lot of the critical thinking skills. So certainly it's impacting us, and we don't know to what extent yet. And that's, scary in and of itself, but let alone if it's a part of your relationship, and there were, expectations and agreements that were made within your particular relationship, and then those are violated in this way that can be confusing and harmful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking about, again, what Rob Weiss showed probably 10 years ago, and the Japanese culture was really having difficulty with this. So when you said that Kinsey said that Americans in particular were prone to AI bots and acting out, I suspect it'll be worldwide. Now, I have a clinical question for you, because I'm talking to Dr. Connie Zollner, who is a CSAT and a supervisor, and she and her colleagues have created the AI. Well, tell me what it stands for. Obviously, artificial intelligence.
Artificial intimacy recovery model.
Okay. So my question was, you work with whoever has problematic sexual behavior, and then you can work with whoever has been betrayed, and then you work with them together?
You can. So it would just be essentially like, some of our models that exist already, whether you're coming from a CSAT model or APSATS model. It's trauma informed in that it's specific to whatever the client's needs are, whatever you're working with. You can, whomever enters your office is, your where you start.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working with a partner, then you start there. Ultimately, probably needing to coordinate care with everybody, but the model is flexible in that way.
Okay. And so as we wind down, I've got a question for you that I don't believe you've answered yet. So forgive me if I'm wrong. This has been fascinating, and
Great.
I know it's probably scary to listen to if you're a partner or an addict who wonders if this is occurring. But anyway, what do you think healthy reconnection or restoration looks like after artificial intimacy, both for the individual and for the couple?
Yeah, it's a great question. Healthy reconnection, I think, has to do with rebuilding trust, self-regulation, and working towards that secure attachment. So learning to tolerate vulnerability if you're the one who's acting out, engaging authentically with other people. Couples should work on communication, resetting some boundaries around this topic specifically, and then co-creating relational safety. So is this something that is okay in our relationship? Yes or no? Having very clear boundaries around is this considered acting out for me? Yes or no? Those types of things are not necessarily built into some of the models that exist right now. So explicitly asking and moving forward with that, just building awareness, helping the couple process what happened, what's going on, and then integrating that reconnection, if either with self or together or both.
Well, and I would assume that this obviously impacts trust, but it would also impact sexuality, the couple's sexuality in general, right?
Very possibly, yeah.
So you've got a lot of different areas to work on. And, in my AIRM, the Early Recovery Couples Empathy Model, I say you don't want to just repair the relationship. You really want to build a whole new one. So it would also be, as part of therapy, an opportunity for them to reconnect in a different way that maybe fills some of the unmet needs of the coupleship in healthy ways, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm working with the person acting out, I'm asking things like, what emotional needs did this AI interaction fulfill? Is it keeping them from engaging in those real world relationships or intimacy with their partner or other people? Is the use secretive, compulsive? Is it interfering with other responsibilities that they have? And then I want to know how the client would feel if access was restricted suddenly. So, those are some of the things that I pay attention to when I'm working with that client profile. And so that's when you start to know, okay, this is probably problematic. And then certainly on the partner side, unwanted, unagreed upon, secret, all of those things, betrayal is still a part of it. So just being curious about what's going on and what wounds are created with the use of the AI.
Well, one of the things about being a coach, in addition to a clinician, is that my whole platform as a coach is being curious. Mm-hmm. And when you're curious, you're non-judgmental. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage professionals that are looking into this to look into finding out more about the artificial intimacy recovery model and how you might educate yourselves so that you spot it when they got it and you're not left in the dark or left in the early 20th century. I mean, really, we have to keep up on this stuff to be our best clinical self. So Dr. Connie, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm talking with Dr. Connie Zollner, and the email is AIRM@theBTRC.com. If you have questions, go there. The website is the same, www.theAIRM.com. And you can find them on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all the social media platforms. Dr. Connie, thanks for educating me, making me a little younger. Appreciate you. Mm-hmm. Tell all the folks out in Bellevue I said hello.
I will.
Okay.